Hi, Gayatri. How are you?
Hi, Ananga. I'm doing well. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Good too. You know,
Good. Oh, God.
I was thinking about who am I as a person, and even in my corporate life, we've gone through some tests called Myers-Briggs test, which actually evaluate your personality. And
Uh-huh.
today we have an amazing guest with us. Her name is Sri Radha Govindadasi. She's here with us. Hi, Hare Krishna.
Hi, Hare
Hey.
Krishna, Gayatri and Ananga. Thank you for
Very
having me.
have you here. We are very honored that Sri Radha Govindadasi is here. She is a president of God Academy from Sridham Mayapur. She is an astrologer, a teacher, and a guide who brings her whose work intersects in bhakti, transformation, astrology, personality types. I am very curious to know about your work. And yeah, I just wanted to know and introduce her. We have a very exciting guest today.
It's really amazing. Sri Radha Govinda, it's so wonderful to see you. And it's such an honor to have this conversation. Actually, I want to start off. y- We, we were looking through your website and we were saying that you actually do astrology consultations. And then you also have a book which says how to mess up your life with astrology. I mean, to me, these are two contradicting facts. Could you shed some light? How are you an astrologer and then still talk about astrology, about messing one's life with astrology?
Yeah, that book got me in a lot of trouble with astrologers. They were like, "How can you write this book? You're ruining our business." Why don't you want people to come to you? Well, see, the real purpose of astrology is not just predictions and what's going to happen. It's much more than that. So, in fact, most of the time I feel bothered by people approaching me with astrological questions because it's like approaching the president asking him for $2 or whatever.
Mm.
So astrology had so much more to offer. So I wrote that book based on my experience as an astrologer. People were really messing up with their life with astrology.
What do you mean by messing up their lives? And what's the question that they were coming up with, which you thought was not worth astrology?
You should read my book, How to Mess Up Your Life with Astrology.
We will
Well,
definitely.
there are different chapters. There are weird ways of messing up your life with astrology. Some people mess up their marriage. Astrology tells them you're not compatible. And then when they don't make it work, they blame astrology. They say, anyway, astrology said we're not going to work. So it's astrology's fault.
Their lives, astrology I've seen, especially for marriage.
Well, there are two ways that they mess up. One way is to over dependency on what astrology predicts. And then there is the other extreme of trying to obey astrology as if it's written on stone. Astrology is not written on stone. Astrology works because there is free will. You created that chart using your free will. So you can use your free will to rewrite your karma. You can rewire your karma.
Exactly. And, when you're emphasizing on the word over dependency, it's like not owning up to how you want to lead. It's just, okay, because astrology, we're not compatible anyway. So let me not even put in any effort. Or you don't want to do any work. There's no question of growth if there's going to be no internal work or external work. There's just absolutely no question of work. And I think what you're trying to emphasize is that people taking astrology as an escape route
Correct.
rather than actually using astrology for direction more than day to day things. So
Yeah, I was thinking it's about prediction. People depend on it as if, oh, what does my astrology say? Well, astrology tells you what your patterns are. We know one of my teachers, He says people who don't know what career to do, they don't know what to do with their life. When they go to an astrologer, you almost know that the person is not going to benefit through astrology. Because if you don't have any clear direction, you don't have any passion, you don't have any interest, astrology, even like numerology, for example, a lot of people pay so much importance. They change their name. They want to fix their spelling, but it's not about the spelling. It's about the mentality. If we don't change our mentality, if we don't want to like work on ourselves, no star, no planet, no number can magically fix our karma. So I think there are two parts to it. One thing is taking responsibility for our karma. And then the second thing is what direction do you want to go? So astrology can reveal what are the patterns that's keeping you stuck and what are certain behaviors that you can rewire your patterns.
Amazing. So if someone does, take support from astrology, has a direction, is willing to do the work, how does astrology then come into the picture? And then should someone take support from astrology? Is it advisable? What do you think? Does it help in any way? And what kind of support should one expect or anticipate from astrology?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I just want to add into that question, just for a real life example. If the astrological chart for someone, hypothetically saying, it shows, okay, this is not a good time for a new career or a job or whatever, business, these 6 months are not favorable for you, then what does that person do? Should they sit back? Should they assume that this 6 months is not going to work for them? Or yeah, what's the free will here when the planets or when everything else, the universe is saying this is not a good time for you?
Yeah, sometimes some people just don't have a great karma for career, or sometimes people just don't have a great karma for marriage. Some people don't have great karma for children. So, first part of astrology is acceptance. The acceptance that there are certain areas of your life that that's not your focus. Because sometimes I do have people who come to me desperate, maybe to make money or to get married. And then I look at the chart and I'm like, you have other areas of life where you can find fulfillment, happiness. But don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially the basket which has nothing underneath. So a lot of people, they have difficulty in accepting, right? Then when you say about timing, that's actually the easiest part. When it says 6 months, don't take up a new job or don't get married in this time, maybe some specific Rahu transit or something, that's a great chance to transform your karma because that period, there are many transits. Something is called Sandhi. The Sandhi is when you're transiting from one particular planetary period to another. We all go through that several times in life. So that transitory period is actually great time to let go of old patterns. That's your break time, from when you're working in the office and you need a break time. That's the break time. So let's say somebody's moving from sun period to moon period. I just had clients yesterday, the husband and wife. The husband is going through the sun period in life, career, the focus is all about has to build my career, and the wife is going through the moon period. So in compatibility, we also make planetary transit compatibility. So we can advise people on, look, this particular 3 years, there will be a little bit of friction. There will be fights. But after 3 years, things will get better because they had a really hard time getting along and they wanted to quit. They wanted to divorce. And we were like, no, you don't need to. There's only like some 2.5 years of austerity. But then, you're going to come through the same periods in life, same priorities. You're going to have a wonderful family. You have really good compatibility. So this is a rainy season. You don't expect to harvest. You wait. You patiently wait for your karmas to purify you. So it really helps. Once I have a lot of senior people like gurus, sannyasis that approach me. And there was one particular person who was in a renounced order and they were considering to get married. And everybody was like, you should get married. And I saw the chart of this person. this person is really a monk, is really a sannyasi, is not he's a renunciant by nature. But then this particular period, the Venus transiting Rahu, and it was like a critical time. I said, just don't do anything for the next 6 months. Just don't act on this. Don't respond. Don't engage with this woman. Just relax. And that person was extremely grateful because that woman turned out not what he thought she was. And yeah. So, astrology is like a warning sign. It doesn't mean you're going to fall in the ditch, but astrology might say, be careful, there's a ditch. Whether you're going to fall in it or not is up to us. So, yeah,
Yeah,
prediction doesn't mean you're going to fall in it.
wow. Wow. That's a beautiful example that you said about the ditch. That's where the free will really comes in, you know. And when you're explaining that you can depend on astrology to know or have a pre warning, do you really recommend that someone should get their charts made, and read to give them some direction in life? I mean, at one point you said that, if someone goes to an astrologer without having any direction, he's really not going to benefit much. But sometimes people go to astrologers to get a direction, to give you an understanding. If some people go who are wanting to get into a career, they're wanting to work, but they're trying to see what their strengths are, apart from, what there are tools. So even colleges, universities, they try to test or understand your skill set by a few tests. Or what was the thing that you did, Ananga?
The Myers-Briggs test. Yeah, that was to evaluate as a person.
Or your anagram, or to understand the strengths and weaknesses and what would be more suitable for a person. How do you tie this in, and how do you still differentiate with having your own understanding of what one should do?
The difference between astrology and these personality analysis like MBTI or Enneagram, the MBTI basically tells the cognitive function, how this person works, cognitively speaking. That's the ability. So the difference is people don't expect MBTI to predict their future. They just, this is my pattern. This is my way of thinking. Many corporate companies, they hire people not based on their certificates. People look at the MBTI and say, this person may not have a degree in management, but the person's nature is such that they'll organize everything. So let's put this person in charge. Or somebody is more, capable naturally with human resources, although they may not have a degree in it. So there's a, let's say, common factor with these personality types and astrology, that astrology does reveal the person's capacity, tendency. But one of my astrology teachers says somebody with a very weak mind should not approach astrologers, because there's a tendency again to mess up their life with astrology, over dependence. They don't know, and so they are naive. There are many astrologers who are totally nonsense. There's a chapter in my book, How to Mess Up Your Life with Astrologers. And there are different kinds of astrologers. There are those who give you too much information, those who have a completely weird idea of what success means, those who try to project their own value system and their own priorities on their clients. Many kinds of, there are sexastrologers. It's a funny part of my book there. Those who use astrology to have sex with other people. Those kinds too. So you have to be very careful. And you have a weak mind, you don't listen to your parents, you don't listen to your teachers, you didn't really do your homework, you didn't study, you don't want to work hard. An astrologer cannot change your life. So you can't just go and try to get some, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is what did you sow yesterday? You're going to reap that tomorrow. That's what is going to happen. So that's what I mean, that astrology is not for everyone. But there are two ways, or two, I would say, aspects, as spoken by a great teacher, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who was very expert astrologer, but he gave it all up. He said when you have a child, you need to understand the nature of the child. So you don't force a kid, or let's say a kid who's a helper, who could be a amazing social worker in life. Don't force him to be an engineer, because a lot of Indian parents do that.
Yeah.
Not force kids to become something that's not their nature. And the second is marriage. No matter your willpower, your strength to transform, your determination, if there is no psychological compatibility, if there is no karmic harmony in a match, it's going to be very unhappy for the family, especially the kids. So these are the only two things that we really kind of, I would say, need astrology to understand the nature of the kid and to make sure that the compatibility is going to be harmonious.
Actually touched on a very interesting point. I also read somewhere, but I'm curious. I know both of you are astrologers, but I have heard that there's an external, that a person has two facets, right? External, where their chart is looked at, lagna, or maybe you can correct me, and there is something internal, what his soul brings from his last lives. It's called Atmakaraka or something. Is there something, two things that you look at for a person when you're reading their charts?
Yes, I mean, there are several things. Atmakaraka is a planet that indicates what's the purpose of the soul journey. What is that soul here to do? What's the soul here to learn? And we all have a specific purpose, which is to find our real self, true self. So for everybody, Sun is their natural Atmakaraka planet. So the position of Sun reveals what is covering the soul this lifetime. And then we all have our own individual Atmakaraka that reveals, like, oh, what is the specific lesson I'm here to learn? Like that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Malvi, I also wanted to ask one question. The sannyasi example that you gave me was very interesting. And I was just thinking that as practicing devotees, as sincere devotees, for years, I'm sure the sannyasi was practicing for a lot of time, but it's not just him, just in general, like we are practicing from so long time and maybe lifetimes, but yet we feel the same insecurities, yet we feel the same reactions, attachments. So, what's the difference between our external practice as devotees and the inner transformation, the free will that you're talking about? How, as devotees, we should practice and use our sadhana as transformation.
Yeah. So it is like a parallel track. Externally, we need to perform sadhana bhakti so we can get purified and acquire higher taste for spiritual world and to enter the spiritual world. And then on the other side, we need to cleanse our heart, anartha nivritti. I need to look deeply. It's not just about externally being spiritual, but it's also about being open to the Lord's plans, being humble, being surrendered. Because even, whether we are astrologers or presidents or greatest people in the world, we all go through certain periods in life where God shows who's the boss. And I think the big difference is, as a devotee, instead of telling God how big our problems are, we can go to the problems and tell how big our God is. So that's the difference.
And also, I do think that, whether you're a sannyasi or a householder or a woman or a man or whoever, you do experience at certain moments, like Shri Radha Govinda was mentioning, that we do have all kinds of seasons. And the composure, your ability to stay composed or to withstand the seasons comes from your practice of spirituality, which is your grounding element. So I think the more you practice, you become less reactive. And
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
100%. It just depends on your practice.
Yeah.
And yeah, how you turn from a bottle of fizz to clean water. You become less and less reactive to your situations and you just let it pass. So even if it's an emotion, you're running a Venus Rahu transit and you're like totally off, completely feeling the need for emotional or a sexual need or whatever it is. But if you let it just sit, and like she said, just let it pass, because you're going to get over it. Sometimes the planets just pull you in different directions. Like the seasons. You're gonna feel cold if it's cold. But what does that really mean?
But we should be careful about suppression, but it's not that, oh, it'll pass and then you suppress it. So I think that's the difference with astrology. We can know whether this is a passing storm or it's a suppressed need that you've been pushing it down, and now that it just needs all the attention. It's like a little kid. How long are you going to ask it to shut up? If it's hungry, you got to feed it sometime. So there are certain kind of emotional needs that might, even in this case of this particular renunciant, maybe the need of having intimate relationships, emotional relationship, nourishment was lacking. And therefore, during this particular transit, it came out in the wild demoniac form. But it's not that it has to always get out of control. And you know, in our in my chat in my website astrogita.com with a double A at the end, we have free remedies. I'm very generous. I have a lot of free services. So people can actually look at where is their planetary, what is this planetary nakshatra? What's the specific personalized mantra for their chart, for their planet? Let's say you're going through your Rahu period. You can go to Astrogita, go to your mantra remedies, put in your data, and then you'll get your Rahu mantra. Just chant that mantra for 21 days, 21 times. And these are the mantras of Vishnu, spoken by Bhishma Dev. And it will heal those specific karmic burdens and patterns connected to your specific Rahu or Saturn or whatever the planet is that you want to pacify. And the difference with mantra is that there's no side effects. But with stones or any other external mundane remedies, there can be side effects. You don't want to put your Rahu completely to sleep because you need Rahu to advance in your career and make progress. So sometimes people tell you, oh, put this stone, you know, your Rahu will go to sleep and all your problems will go away. But yeah, along with problems, your opportunities will also go away. So you don't want to put your Rahu completely to sleep. But mantras always have a way to empower the good side and pacify the negative side.
Amazing. You know, when you were emphasizing that we can consult an astrologer specifically for a child or compatibility in marriage, what if someone's already married? Okay. Whether they check the charts or they didn't really, and they are going through a period of a rainy season, per se. We're also giving an example of someone that wanted to just split. But you said, you know, just hold on for a few years at certain points of time. So there is a lot of emphasis on growing together. If you look at any marriage counselors, they talk about growing together because you attract a partner based on how you know, how you perceive the world, how you are at a particular period of time. And then one
Absolutely.
starts to grow in one direction and the other person starts to grow in another direction, or they don't grow at the same time, at the same speed. And then that difficulty comes in. How would you say that one should, you know, take support from astrology?
Mhm.
Because there have been really wonderful moments to share in a marriage. And how does one, you know, like exactly take support from astrology to continue to keep this relationship healthy? So it's more about being actively helpful.
Very good question. I love this topic because my specialization is with relationship astrology, compatibility counseling, because I also studied psychotherapy. This is a very big interest for me. I would give an analogy of a kitchen. So the kitchen is your compatibility with the partner. Some kitchens are fantastic. There's a great oven, best organic ingredients. You have a fridge full of great stuff. Everything is there. imagine in an amazing 5-star kitchen, the person doesn't know how to cook.
Hmm.
And have you been to Raj, Ananga? Have you been in Vrindavan where the ladies make a big feast just with a hole in the ground and a few firewood sticks, from the garden behind, from their own garden, few fire sticks, and they make a big feast. So compare those two kitchens. So that is the compatibility. Kitchen equals compatibility. So the compatibility means, oh, you have great ingredients. Does not mean you will prepare a good meal.
Yeah.
And absence of the great kitchen does not necessarily mean you will starve. So again, goes back to what Gayatri was saying earlier. It's also the individual capacity. It's also the individual ability to cook, I would say, in this analogy. So I have this training in our Astrogita program. There's an individual capacity before you get married or when you are married that is way more important than compatibility itself. There are moments, I mean, Gayatri is an amazing cook, and she has moments where the fire runs out or the tomatoes run out or a particular ingredient that you need to cook something runs out when the guest comes. But the expertise of a good cook is they still manage to get a
Hmm.
great meal on the table without fretting and frowning and fussing and pulling the hair out and rolling on the floor because there is not that particular ingredient. So we all will have something in our marriages that is missing because, this is the material world. If everything was good, we will never want to leave from here. So there has to be something that reminds us, the Saturn energy, that reminds us, game over, pack your bag, your home is up there. There has to be, right? So this thing of time, there may be moments where there's no fire in the kitchen. I watched a movie show about a lady cook, this master chef type of cooking exercise or like the last final test, and that lady does not have fire and she has to make the meal. And of course, she's a great cook, so she manages without the fire and still wins the competition. Of course, that's the movie. The movie, in our movie of our life, what are we going to do? And there is no drinking water or there is no fire. How will you still prepare a meal? And I think this brings the whole thing to women, the focus, because that's actually one of my focus. I always try to help women learn this big lesson that my grandma always taught. Don't spill your feminine energy. Don't become over dependent on the man internally. Externally, you be very graceful and accept his support and shelter, but internally, always trying to understand to be strong. She always said, women nowadays, modern women, they're very strong on the outside, but they're very weak on the inside. So many compatibility issues and the complaints about, I don't have this ingredient, I don't have that, and the fridge is not how I want, and the oven is not working exactly as I want. Compare that with all the other marriage issues people have. It's because we've lost our own ability to fulfill 50% of the needs that we can fulfill by ourselves. So, this over dependence on marriage creates this scarcity and this desperation that people want to divorce, both men and women. But I was focusing on women because I've been doing this course called Rewire Your Karma and Relationships. And this is all about how, like what Govind Priya said, strengthening this internal strength of your sadhana. What sadhana gives you is that internal strength.
Really interesting. And, just maybe a few 10 minutes back, you mentioned something about the transit and transit being the best time to actually rework or do a lot of internal work. How would you describe that? And what does that entail? If I'm running a transit, what should I do? How should I really utilize this knowledge of knowing that I'm going to be in a transit?
Transit is like traveling. You have that experience, you're working in a place, you take a vacation, you travel somewhere. During the time that you're moving from where you live to maybe where your parents live, the journey between the two places, that's the transit. So that's what is happening when planets are there. So let's say your home is sun and your parents' home is moon. So in between, you're neither in sun nor moon. So during transits, you're not under the control of any planetary strengths. It's kind of good and bad. It's good because that's the time that you can really rewire your karma. It's not so good because it's a little bit like you're not at home. You're in the airplane flying. So you're just in that space. I really like transit periods because it's very scientific. How it's organized, what period comes after what. It's the way that nature has arranged for human beings to experience cycles in life. We never always go through Mars period. We never always go through Saturn. It always ends. And then there's always the rainbow, and there is always the rain, and there's always the storm. There's always summer and winter, and everything has to be there. Imagine it's always winter, especially for you guys who stay in the US. Imagine it's always cold. You never see the sun. It's terrible. And for us in India, it's scorching heat here, right? It's super hot. Imagine never having winter. So we want summer and winter. So Sitoshna Sukha Dukkhada. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita actually says that happiness and distress, if we can learn to be equanimous, somehow or another, not to become too disturbed by the heat and to not become too attached to the happiness. Because, my husband always says, don't become too excited when things go well. You know why? Because you will suffer terribly when things don't go well. But if you're like, things are going great, okay, very good, God's grace. Things are not going great, okay, God's grace, I'm learning something. So if we can be somehow, what is it called? Equanimity, right?
Yeah.
To try to be
Please throw any key points as well in the focus.
point. Yeah. To not to lose our ground, because the profit and the loss doesn't define my worth. And the loss actually should highlight my worth even more. Not the other way around.
That's amazing. Thank you for saying that. I also was reflecting on what you said just when you were mentioning about the marriage thing, ability before compatibility. Sometimes we lose ourselves in a marriage or in a relationship. We become overly dependent emotionally, but we don't know our ability. And I know you do a lot of things around psychology, like individual assessment, knowing the person, their personality. Anartha Nivriti is also a program that you're doing. And I know as devotees, even as a human being, Anartha Nivriti is a long bridge that we all have to cross. It's a huge bridge. Like we start very ecstatically, start very fast. But the Anartha Nivriti is a huge, long, long bridge that we have to cross to get to Nishtha, which is steadiness. So can you mention more about your program, what Anartha Nivriti does, and how do you help people get to their full potential as well?
Yeah. Let me show you some dolls I have here to explain some concepts. This is a doll who's hiding a little bit. You see, it has an umbrella and it's all covered up. So this is like certain parts of us which is scared. Like you said, maybe in a relationship. What if nobody loves me? So let me hang on to this. What if I don't deserve more love? But maybe this is all I get. So there are parts of us that believe that, right? So unearthed doesn't always mean something you beat up and destroy and kick it and drown it in the Ganges. It's not always like that. There are also anarthas where we try to tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, nobody loves me, I'm always going to be this way. That's also anartha because that's being dishonest. We are God's children. We are precious. We are lovable. And God loves us. But then there is this little part which may be traumatized, hurt when we were a kid. And then it always tells us, don't trust anybody. Don't let anybody close. So these anarthas keep us blocked from experiencing bhakti. Okay. So I always like to emphasize that honesty doesn't mean, oh, only counting all your faults and flaws. Honesty would mean to also look at gifts that you have, nice things that God has given you. So honesty includes both to see your strengths and weaknesses and the ability to say, okay, I have these and I'll work on my weaknesses and I'm going to thrive on the strengths, focus more on the strengths. So when I am trying to help my students with anartha nivritti, I always emphasize more on this softer aspects of softer parts of us which are stuck. Because there are also the stronger parts of us, no warrior part. Let's get things done. Don't be lazy. Let's go fight, be an achiever, get this done, get that power, the position, this certificate. There's also that part. But we can't neglect this part. So, anartha nivritti essentially means to have an honest look at both parts and to heal those parts which are blocking us from experiencing joy, from experiencing peace. Like I mentioned that word, sometimes we think that I have to prove my worth, right? So the anartha there is you don't need to prove your worth. You're already worthy for God. So sometimes anartha nivritti just means accepting yourself and giving yourself certain level of honest, positive affirmations that we look for others to give us.
So
Yeah.
part of the challenge is to identify the anarthas. Is your program also helping with that? Just to identify them?
Absolutely.
Especially these ones like self-talk, the quality of self-talk I'm doing. I didn't know that that was also part of anarthas as well. So
Absolutely.
how do you help identify this? Is it through
So there
astrology?
are there are something called covert anarthas and overt anarthas.
For
No, the covert anarthas are more tamasic, like all this self-defeating tapes and dialogues, like I'm not good enough and all that. And the overt anarthas are I am the great and everybody else is nonsense, and that's passion, the mode of Rajoguna,
Mm.
right? So Satvaguna doesn't mean that we don't have any anarthas. Satvaguna just means to honestly look at them and to not become overwhelmed. But I think for me, anartha nivritti in one word is healing. We need to heal those anarthas. It's not about destroying them.
I'm still stuck with the question on the transit and how can one do something? What should one do during those transits that will help the process of anartha nivritti?
Yeah, I think let's talk about some practical tips and you can also add Gayatri. One important thing during transits is don't try to apply goals that you wanted to achieve in the beginning of that period and you're moving into another period. Because there's always, either you're moving from sun to moon, which is like full fire to full cool, like from summer to winter. More emphasis, moon period would be emphasizing your emotions over other aspects of life. And moving, say, from moon period to Mars period, whoa, that's very suddenly, from winter, you're jumping into the springtime and there is all harvest to do. There's a lot of Mars activities and you may become very temperamental. So it's good to understand what period are you leaving and what period are you entering. It's, I think, knowledge, it's not even astrology, it's just scientific. What kind of life stage are you in? Are you in your career? Is that end or end all be all? Or do you want to move into your family, etc.? Like for somebody who's in sun period, like my clients yesterday, okay, sun period, career, how much money is enough? What is the stage you want to reach? When will you want to focus on your family? So these are very kind of practical, psychologically healthy questions we can ask. And yeah, tricky periods I would say are Rahu period. Rahu always confuses us. Oh, thank you. Rahu always confuses us because Rahu is trying to shed light on those areas of our life that we've been neglecting. So there can be confusion. So the first tip is don't try to force goals during transit times. Second is try to understand the nature of the planet that is leaving and the nature of planet that is coming in. I am currently in my transit period soon between my Mars and my Rahu. And I understand that my Mars is all about, it's always working hard, carrying buckets of water to people. And Rahu period is more about, no, I don't want to carry buckets of water. I want to build a bridge. I want to build a well so people can go. So I can see that shift from doing individual consultations. Now I'm moving to providing free reports and free facilities and courses. So that's like that Rahu is coming. So I can't force myself to be like how I was in my Mars period. So this lessons of Mars has been very valuable, but I can't hold on to it. I have to let it go and I have to welcome the new teacher, the new tutor. So the third tip is remember when you were in school and you had to go from one grade to the other and you had a different set of teachers, perhaps? You're moving to a different college, perhaps, different school, perhaps. So that's how you have to treat your own life choices and decisions. You will be a different person in your transit time. And there's always a 6 months when the period is ending, on the 6 months when the period is beginning, it is very vulnerable. So don't make any major decisions moving to a specific place unless you do astrocartography and you're really sure that that's a good place for you. Major movements can also be it's very costly. And there are also Sandhi Shantis if you can afford. You can get certain yagyas done where brahmanas can make your transition smoother, or you can chant mantras on your own. You can, like, for example, if you're moving from Mars to Rahu, chant your Mars mantras and chant your Rahu mantras. That will also provide a smoother flow. Anything else, Gayatri, you have as an advice for those who may be going through transits?
No, I think you really, really grounded this well. I was just thinking that whenever I know there is a transit, particularly for myself, I kind of try to prepare in a way that, this is what I can expect. And I try to use a period of, my previous, to, because I think like when you were mentioning, I'm more, the tendency for me to is get things done, to be a little bit more on the practical edge. So I'll kind of like chalk it out and think that, okay, there is a transit happening and I'm going into this particular period. So, okay, if I'm running a Jupiter, I've always wanted to do my Bhakti Vaibhav. Let me get enrolled. Let me start to make a plan. Let me use this support system that's coming from Jupiter to fulfill one of my deep desires of in a particular aspect. And I think it's been helpful because then you feel that you're not really swimming against the current. You're flowing with the current. Because then the same effort that I was putting in to do Bhakti Weber 2 years back
Correct.
becomes much more easier and much more pleasurable and much more nourishing. And yeah, that's how I think knowing your transits is helpful and knowing the nature. So basically, when you're saying, your teacher is changing, get to know how this teacher is going to be. Is this going to be a strict teacher? Is this going to be one of those really kind and affectionate teachers? Is this because if you don't, if you don't work according to the teacher, then it might not, there's going to be friction. So if you know, okay, there's going to be Saturn, he's a really strict principal, you might as well watch your guards and stop being, reflect how have you led your life? Have you led a righteous life? Otherwise, be prepared that you're going to be disciplined in some way or the other.
Or
So,
for some people, maybe Saturn is one of their greatest benefactor. Maybe they are Mitra or in their avasthas. the position of Saturn and the relation to Moon, they are very cooperative. So Saturn may be the best period where you gain property, you gain inheritance, you get all that you were waiting for. And one good thing I wanted to say about transits was I always like to show with the dolph. Let's say the Mars period, you're entering, say, Mars period, there's always Narshingadev. The Lord of the planet is also important that we have to understand. It's not just the Mars, but it's also the Dashavatars. Every planet has a specific Vishnu avatar. Let's say you're in Ketu, Matsyadev. Let's say you're in Rahu, Varahadev. So
Who's the
every
Saturn? I just keep
Saturn is Kurmadev.
with it.
So every planet has a specific Vishnu avatar. By worshipping that specific avatar, the transits are going to be much more smoother.
This is a
Yeah.
good reminder as well. Like for each planet, there is a Vishnu avatar. That means all these demigods, as we say, devatas, they are just they're just giving what Dashavatars have in store.
Correct. The mood, like Matsya's mood is to go dive deep into the water and bring out what is truly important for us. Huh?
Mm.
Nrsimhadev, no, he's a Vatsalya. Actually, Rupa Goswami, although now we may think Nrsimha must be some very Ghora or something. No, he's actually Vatsalya. He's a very protective energy.
Mm.
So it's very helpful to have knowledge of avatars and their moods so we can actually succeed in our planetary lessons.
Really amazing. Yeah, I love the way you tied it with the deity,
Yeah.
the way you tied it with the personality of the Lord specifically, and understanding that Nrsimhadev has that protective energy, and that's why you're connecting it to Mars. Beautiful. It was really insightful.
So, Astro Gita, that's the idea of Astro Gita, how to understand the principles of Gita and apply those in our life, astrology, with the understanding of the avatars.
So, there was another question that was coming to my mind was, now the planetary transits, and you know that you're going to go from, let's say you're going from Rahu to or Venus. So I don't remember exactly what the transit is, or to Jupiter or whatever. And when
Rahu
you
to Jupiter or Mars to Rahu.
right, Rahu to Jupiter. And now these are very distinctive. How do you also understand what that significantly represents in your chart? Movement of the planet is also extremely crucial because you might just start becoming a little bit like you were explaining about the renunciate. Even though Venus has a particular energy, where is Venus actually situated? What is he going to become obsessed with? What is this conjunction of Venus and Rahu going to do? So I think, in a personal sense, everybody should have some knowledge of how to align, some knowledge of astrology or the planets to align yourself. And then, of course, for major decisions in life, they should seek a bona fide, like a bona fide guru, a bona fide astrologer. I just love what I had heard from, one of my astrology teachers when they say that Jyota Isha, Jyota means the eyes and Isha is the Lord. So from astrology, it's something that you see with the eyes of the Lord. So it's, you perceive uh, what's going to happen in the future because you're able to see with the eyes of the Lord. But your grounding and your practice is actually what keeps you stable of not becoming overwhelmed with that. It's like, it's, um, it's like having the Trikaldarshi and then becoming completely bewildered by it. So actually, how they go hand in hand Because I've noticed that many good astrologers have a very, very deep sadhana. Even if it might not just be Vedic, they all have to have a very strong sadhana because that's what kind of helps them keep be grounded when they're going to be able to see so many things. What is your your understanding or perspective on that?
The first thing you said, everybody should. I'm not sure I agree. Traditionally, the Brahmanas, the teachers, or the gurus, they knew astrology so they could guide people. Because based on the varna or the inclination, if somebody is like interested always with money, they will only use astrology for money. So that will not be very dharmic. So I would say it should be on a need basis. Astrology should be, like I said, to understand our nature and to find the right partner. Otherwise, people can become too addicted, checking all the time astrology and especially, even our hands, the lines keep changing as we do spiritual activities. Similarly, even our charts, we mature, even the planets mature. Every stage of our life, Mars matures and then Saturn matures. And then at 42, Rahu matures. At 48, Ketu matures. So every planet has its own maturation as well.
Matures isn't through our practice or through our experiences in life.
As
Or
the cycle, what that planet is supposed to teach us, if
Mhm.
it's like graduation, Rahu
Mhm.
graduation is at 42. You
Right.
graduate.
It's with the test then.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Always.
I was actually doing a study recently last month, and when you said Ketu matures around this mid age,
40. Mhm.
45 to 48, and it was amazing because I was just reading. There was a study done by an astrologer, and he was saying that a lot of divorces, that's like a second inning of because and if you look at it scientifically, woman is going through perimenopause and menopause, and you're kind of like becoming detached, and at the same time you're now so accustomed to knowing each other. So it's kind of, and at the same time, Vedic scriptures say take vanaprastha.
Mm.
Take vanaprastha. This is the appropriate time for detachment. And so I was like, it's kind of really timed in a way if you're actually following that clock.
Yeah.
You know,
People commit suicide in those ages as well. 42 to 48 is when they have that midlife crisis and people commit suicides too. That's like the tamasic part of it. Rajasic part may be the divorce and tamasic part may be the suicides.
yeah, I was quite interested and curious about that whole study. It was like quite fascinating.
Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're saying that I'm also thinking of all the people that I know that divorced in that age. Those
Yeah, because Ketu has matured at that particular period of time. And what's really amazing is that when we really try not to follow the just the way our lives are right now, we're unable to follow the biological clock. We're unable to, when we're waiting for something to settle before we get into something, when all of that is happening, you might not really have long time before Ketu really matures at that particular age to really have a really wonderful married life, in terms
they
of
even said at 50 is when life truly begins. They say that kind of stuff as well.
right. And I think that comes from like you kind of like led through that phase, you matured, you've grown, and now you're like on your own kind of,
I've been there, done that.
Yeah. And then you do what you truly value. You don't care about others anymore. You know what you don't want, and you finally get to do what you truly want at 50.
yeah. It's amazing. It's the same person. of course, the life experiences. Actually, my older son was mentioning something really interesting. I was just complaining and I said, how are the two of you so different? Both have the same parents, both raised in, and Premanand, my older son, he looks at me, he says, no, we didn't really have the same parents. And I was like, what? So he's, no, you were different when you had, and different when you had Kishu.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, I said you were different because you already had me, you were exhausted, you were different. And when I think back, I was different.
Yeah.
I was different. You may think it's the same person, but no. Maybe if I had to make similar decisions at different times of my life, it would have been a different decision based on how I felt at that particular point of time. So yeah, planets do really
Change our
life, influence our lives. And
change is up to all.
change is definitely up to us.
What
It was
is
such a
change is inevitable, growth is optional.
ah, that's beautiful.
I think that's what transits, I think we can conclude transits as that change is inevitable, growth is optional.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. I also like your covert and overt unearthers. That's also something new I learned and I wrote it down as well.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Shreya Govinda, for this wonderful conversation and for all of your contribution in this particular field, which I think is so mature and grounding because you can really mess your life with immature astrologers. And that is really something we need to take seriously. It's like having a mentor, or having the guru per se. So thank you for your work in that field and thank you for your contribution to this particular space of life. It's a very, very important, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, thank you for the enriching conversation. And we'll link all the links that you mentioned in the description below.
Thank you. It was fun discussing these topics.
Thank you so
Absolutely. Based on the questions we get from our audience, maybe we should have you back particular segment. We didn't even touch on human design and we didn't even
Yeah, human design is a very everyday thing. How do you make decisions? How do you pick choices in life? And, it's all in your body. You can actually get messages. So it's a part of astrology.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
And